This is Modern Persian Food,
a culinary podcast for today's food enthusiast.
We talk about classic Persian flavors,
modern recipes,
and embracing culture and identity through food.
I'm Bita.
And I'm also Bita.
Welcome to our show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode number 90. We are joined today by Leyla from Learn Persian of Chai and Conversation, a great podcast and a Persian learning course. And we are super excited to have her here talking to us today about tarof and hospitality and entertaining, and also food as a way to really break down barriers and introduce people to our lovely food and culture and language. Leyla Jun, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And as always, we have our lovely co-host, Bita. Hi, Bita Jun.
Hi, Bita. Hi, Leyla. It's strange for me to say that our older daughter is also Leyla, spelled the exact same way. So it's endearing for me to see your name and also just to have you. I've been following you and trying to learn Farsi. You do really important work.
Thank you so much.
So Leyla Jun has helped thousands of people to embrace and learn the Farsi language, Persian as you call it. So thank you for joining us.
I think we just wanted to really start off by actually thanking you for being such a great resource for people in our community and people who are interested in learning about Persian culture. So thank you so much for doing that. And also taking the time today to be here. We definitely love also your features that you do about poetry. And I noticed that you're doing stuff about music and kind of sharing that with everybody. So it's an honor to have you on the show.
Thank you so much.
Let's go ahead and start off with tarof. You have a little series on it, but could you share for us and for people who are not really familiar with what tarof is, can you give us kind of an overview? What is tarof in the Persian culture?
Sure. So I grew up in an Iranian household. I moved here when I was 3.5 years old. But I grew up in a house with my grandmother, my grandfather, my mom, my aunts and uncles were all around. We all came to the Dallas area, so we were all there. So, like a lot of immigrants, my home life versus my outside life was very different. And it took me a while to figure out what is tarof and what's not. When I got to college, I would go to a friend's house and they would say, "Do you want some water?" And I'd say, "Oh, no, thank you." And then everyone else would get water. And then I'd sit there. And the entire time I would just agonize over, well, now can I say I do want water? Of course I want water. What are they thinking? Of course I want something to eat. Of course. And everyone else would get these things and I wouldn't. Or friends would say, "Oh, you're coming into town. Can we pick you up from the airport?" And I'd say, no, that's okay. They'd say, "No, come on, let us pick you up." And, I would just I'd tarof. And it took me a long time to realize that this was different in the Iranian culture than in the American culture. And I really had to speak up for what I wanted in American culture. It was a big adjustment for me. And I remember that whole transition to the point where I realized that that's what's going on. And I always say growing up in Texas also, there is an element of tarof in the way people talk to one another. And tarof, the way I define it, I read Human Majd actually had a book a long time ago where he said that tarof is a kind of dance. And so I like that description of it. I always use that description as a dance where everybody knows the steps. Mm-hmm. And kind of like two-stepping in Texas, everybody knows the steps. There's a parameter within it, and it's not free-form dancing. And as long as everyone knows the steps and they're in line, you can make this really beautiful dance out of it. But then if someone doesn't know the steps, it becomes very difficult, and it just doesn't work. So tarof is our dance of niceties, and it's a big tradition in Iranian culture. So like I said, it took me a long time to figure out what is tarof, what is just my personality, and how to navigate that in the culture.
That's a great description. I hadn't heard about it as a dance, but that's a great way to put it. In my head, I think of it as a politeness, which I guess what you said as a nicety.
Etiquette, exactly. But for me, a lot of people are very negative towards tarof. And as I've come to understand it more and more, like I said, Texas also has its form of tarof. I know in the Northeast, people are a lot more honest with one another, and they're not, here everyone smiles in the street, or when you go to the store, people say, "How are you doing? How's your day? How's this?" I see that as tarof as well. A lot of people from the Northeast come and they're like, they don't really care how my day is. Why do they keep asking that? Why does the cashier ask me that? But then to me, that's a form of tarof. And it's just a way here that we show each other that you're a human, I'm a human. We're not just making a financial transaction here. which is a lot what Tarof is too. And it comes up, you guys have a food podcast. It comes up a lot around food.
Right.
Providing people with food and providing, kindness to one another within this framework. And so for me, I love Tarof. I've come to really love it. I feel like it takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of slowness that a lot of people don't have in today's world. And I think that it adds a nice layer of having to acknowledge our humanity to interactions. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, thank you. Our listeners are, a lot of them like us, Persian, growing up in Persian families who understand it. But then we also have listeners who are not Persian. And so this is a new concept. So, a formality, which, like you said, there's lots of similar type of formalities throughout our own country of U.S. And, I grew up in the Midwest, and I think there's like this Midwestern friendliness.
Oh, yeah.
When you meet someone else who's from the Midwest, it's just different, and that's kind of also somewhat close to the South. And I have connections with people in the South, and the, yes, sir, and yes, ma'am. And it becomes like automatic
right.
when you have grown up in that way. It's just automatic. It's like a part of you. And I think that's what it kind of is for me. And with regards to food, and there's also like a little bit of impulse control, like, you don't go very first in the line, and especially if you're the host.
Right.
I'm with you, Leyla. I actually really appreciate Tarof. I view it as just really kind of like a form of respect to other people, like in your family or in your community or your guests, that really just trying to provide the best for them. Even the example of like two people walking through a door, walking through the threshold, wanting to have the other person go first, like giving the respect to the other person. You go ahead and go first, or you be the first person to take the piece of tajik or whatever it is. Just giving your best and respecting the other person, I think is really where it stems from. I do know that some people have some negative feelings about Tarof because I think that they think that it's fake.
Right.
They don't really want to like participate in kind of like that dialogue. But ultimately, I do think it's a beautiful quality of our culture. It just shows the love and compassion that people have for each other, that wanting to like provide for each other and kind of like give them the best opportunity to walk through a door, take the first serving of something, or let me treat you, let me pay for you. So really kind of giving that type of attention. Right. But yeah, coming into someone's home and entertaining and displaying all of the best things that they have is such a part of Persian culture. And like even how we kind of like set the table, usually like there's beautiful platters of abundant food, the platters are always overflowing. I remember even like my parents, when they would entertain, you never want to see the bottom of the platter because you don't want it to be like, oh, I ran out of food or I don't have enough for my guests. You always want your platter to be like overflowing and abundant. What are some of the foods that you like to share with other people as kind of like when you're introducing them to Persian food and Persian culture?
Yeah, well, I'll say I didn't really grow up in a food-centric family. For my family, we did eat a lot of Iranian food growing up, so I had wonderful food. But everyone in my family kind of views cooking as a necessity rather than something that they just love to do slowly, and everything's kind of, how to do the fastest way, like do shortcuts. And so I didn't really grow up with that culture of like being in the kitchen with my mom and grandmother.
Yeah.
So actually it wasn't until after I graduated college and I was living on my own that I started buying books. Like I got Najmi Badmanglich's book first, and I started just cooking out of that. And I really started embracing the idea of like slow cooking of Persian food. And now when I go back to Dallas to visit my family, I like provide the meals. Like I'm the one who cooks because no one really enjoys it very much.
It's really an art that kind of takes a lot of time to do. And you really kind of have to be passionate about it to be able to do it.
Definitely. And as a working person, I had a single mom. Like there's no time to make khoresh or sabzi or whatever which is funny. So my 5-year-old, that's his favorite food, khorma sabzi, over anything. I mean, I always say like khorma sabzi or pizza, khorma sabzi or hamburgers, khorma sabzi. That's all he likes. But I cook it using the bottom of the pot, the Nazderavian method of being in sabzi jail for a day to like get all my sabzi ready. And it takes me 2 days to cook that. And that's the only way I like to do it. I don't like to take shortcuts. I know there's a lot of ways I could cut it down. But like once a month we'll have ghormeh sabzi. Like, we can't have this any more than that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've really embraced on my own this culture of making food. And like my family, we always ate together. That was very, very important. And I've continued that with my family now, even though my husband is American. My kids are half Iranian, but we definitely eat a lot of Iranian food, a lot of slow food. And I do love to entertain and try to have that whole like mehmuni spirit with my friends here as well.
Oh, that's great. I love that.
Yeah. So what do you like to cook and share with them?
So I love making ghormeh sabzi, like I said. I love all the khoreshes. I love khoresh karafs. I love khoresh qiymeh. Salad shirazi is always such a big hit. The tomatoes and cucumbers and everything. And my husband has an Irish background. He loves Iranian food as well.
That's so fun. And then didn't you mention that you were making salad uluviya for some friends? How did that turn out?
That's right. It was really good. I hadn't had that in like 20 years myself. But then I looked up the recipe and it was amazing. I took it for my sons. They had a camping cookout with all of his friends from school. So it was really wonderful.
It's a good camping or picnic food.
Yeah. So good. So good. It was a hit.
Yay. That makes me really happy to hear.
I didn't necessarily grow up with a ton of mehmuni. We had some, but I definitely married into a family. And mehmuni is Farsi for sort of party or entertaining. I married into a family that did a lot of that. Big parties and entertaining and buffet style and learning to wait for the guests to go first and all of those things.
Right.
But one thing that definitely that I see my kids doing and my nieces who are still relatively young, that is a formality with guests and relatives coming over is the sort of the greeting and the when somebody's arriving and when somebody's leaving, they absolutely know from a super young age. Like you go to the door, you embrace and kiss and hello.
Right.
And everybody does. Like everybody comes to the door for the greeting and everybody goes for the goodbye and you don't miss anyone. All of the kids know that. And I just think it's cute because it's a little different than the cultural norms.
Right.
Do your kids do that as well?
I think there's the whole push and pull of the like American culture of like, it's your body. You don't have to kiss everybody. You don't have to, I don't know. It's hard. I mean, they're 2 and 5, so they're little and yeah, I can kind of tell them what to do, but sometimes it slips a little, I have to admit.
Well, and we are just coming out of a world pandemic and
exactly.
There hasn't been a lot of hugging and kissing and your kids are young.
You're right. Yeah, my little one turned 1 during the pandemic. So yes, that is a big part of it too. That's a good point.
Right.
Yeah, I hear you too. You know, my husband is not Persian either. So it's kind of like an interesting dynamic of trying to really instill kind of these like pillars of Persian culture into like the children's kind of mindset, but yet having kind of balance. I mean, like I remember when we were little, like when guests would come, you of course, boland, migi, nice and loud, you say like salam. And like if someone talks to you, you like answer back and you whatever. And I'm not really able to always convey that to my kids to like, hey, someone's saying hi to you. You need to like stand up, look at them in the face and like ask them how they're doing and things like that. So it's kind of like a little bit of a struggle really to kind of get them on board with some of these even basic traditions and Persian cultural norms that we kind of like felt like growing up and for people who are like full Persian family, maybe have an easier time doing that. But one thing is I know that like we're trying like, you know, my mom had some people over and my daughter was there and my daughter was doing the pazirai. So she was walking around with a platter of cookie to each person. And there's like an art to that really. Like I remember growing up, I would do that and you walk around with a tray of tea or cookies and you always go bifarma. You know, you have to like kneel down a little bit so that they can reach it easily. It's like really putting your guest at ease, bringing them the tea. The act of like kind of bending lower is really so that they don't have to like raise their hand too high because you like respect them and want them to get the tea easily or whatever, you know, like passing out cookies and passing out the zirdasi, the little plates and showcasing all of like the great foods and stuff that we have and being able to like share them with people. But it's really interesting to kind of see like the next generations of how it's kind of morphing into like a little like hybrid cross-cultural generation.
Yeah, there's challenges. And you guys still have younger kids too, and maybe not as many mehmunis with having a blended family, but the teenage years were tough, you know, because you're not there yet, but there's years where they'll be in their rooms It's like, no, you need to be here. My family growing up, it was like the sitting in a circle, like super old fashioned formal. That's what you do. You like sit, your chairs are all in a circle, like you're doing the Mehmooni thing. Mm-hmm. But at the minimum, they got to come out. And at the very minimum, they got to say hello and goodbye. Mm-hmm. And then you go to your room, whatever we all give up.
Yeah, exactly. Fine. Go play on your tablet or whatever. Do you guys think that there's like a modern versions of Tarof? Like, I know we kind of talked about how like different parts of the country will have their own kind of version of it. But do you guys think that it's just really like kind of like a form of like respect that we're giving, and maybe that there's other ways that people can kind of show that?
Yeah, I think that, like I said, like it's taken me a long time to kind of be comfortable with what level of Tarof I want to be at. But I do think it's just, you have to conform to where you're living. Like, I'm not going to stand at a door and just be like, you go in America, because it's just going to, get people upset. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I've learned when I go to someone's house and they ask me, do I want something? I have to assess, like, is this person, an immigrant? Then like Asians or like Indians or whatever, they probably have that same form of Tarof. So I can't be too forthright with what I want. Yeah. But if they're American, yeah, definitely. I want that thing that you're offering. I want one. I want that. I want that, You have to be flexible coming from a different culture. But I do try to, like I said, again, living in Texas and with my kids, try to instill that respect and kindness. And if they're around Iranians, they need to know how to Tarof. They can't be the first one at the table. Absolutely not. They have to ask my mom if she wants to go first, or have that sense of respect to the family at least.
Yeah, and then there's restaurants. So I think an easy modern thing to do, of course, as you said, it depends who you're with, the other members that you are with, but
yeah, absolutely.
Just to kind of figure out ahead of time, we're going Dutch, mm-hmm. and maybe even to communicate that and just to avoid mm-hmm. anything uncomfortable.
Right.
You mean in terms of like who's paying for who? Yeah.
Fighting over the bill. Yeah, that's a Tarof thing.
I had so many friends in college where I would end up paying for their food for no reason because I had this Tarof as a poor college student. It would happen a lot. Or I would have boyfriends where we would go out and I'd say, oh, let me get it this time. They'd be like, oh, why? Okay, sure.
That's the way it's supposed to go. The dance. Don't forget the Tarof dance.
Yeah, the dance.
Right. I'd get so angry.
Awesome. Well, this was like so much fun, Leyla June. Thank you so much for joining us. As you may know, we have a segment at the end of our episodes called Ask the Beats, where we take listener questions or questions that people send us via Instagram or email. And we could just really be about anything. And since you're here with us right now, is there anything that you would like to ask for Ask the Beats?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to know what the motivation was behind starting this podcast and where you guys are at right now, where you think that it'll go in the future. I'm excited to hear.
Yeah, great question. Bita, you want to start us off?
Sure. Yeah, the motivation, we just found each other through social media, and we found out that we both had a common passion, which was kind of connecting to our culture through Persian food. And that's what we find is at the root of almost everyone we have on as a guest. They may have different specialties. Your specialty is language and poetry and music. Someone else's specialty might be something entirely different. We've had comedians. We've gotten to meet so many people in the community. But what it comes down to is everyone seems to kind of share this passion for connecting to our old culture through food. And that's what Bita and I have in common. And it's just grown. And our other thing that we connect on is creating recipes. So it was just kind of like, it made sense to share in this broader way and this audio way.
Yeah, ultimately, I think our goal of the podcast is really to enable people and give people the confidence that they can attempt to make Persian food or use Persian ingredients or Persian techniques in their everyday lives. And, when we get emails or messages from people that our podcast has influenced them or has inspired them, it's just so great to hear that. Persian food is delicious. Everyone should be eating it or being familiar with it. And if you can't do it, then going into a Persian restaurant, supporting our local Persian community. And we just want to just kind of spread the word about Persian food and, enable people to eat this beautiful, fresh, healthy meal cuisine. That's what's really kind of really what powers us. And this is our 90th episode. So
oh, wow. Nice.
we've been banging out weekly episodes.
Amazing.
For the last 2 years almost. And we are like kind of getting to a point where we're ready to take the podcast to the next level. So over the next few months, we're looking to potentially bring maybe some sponsors, trying to bring really great products to everyone's attention and have some really cool guests come on. And, we're talking about a lot of really cool things, basic ingredients, more elaborate ingredients and dishes, and also just like really connecting to our audience and sharing the beautiful flavors of Persian food.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much for joining us, Leyla. Can you please tell us where can our listeners find you and find more about Chai and Conversation?
Sure. Well, I'm on Instagram at Chai and Conversation, with Chai spelled Chai. And then we also have a website, chaiandconversation.com, spelled again Chai. And there we have different courses that teach you Persian, the Persian language, poetry, like y'all said, reading and writing. And then we have, YouTube videos, a podcast, just all over the place. It's 12 years now that I've been doing this. So a lot of stuff out there. Just Google us.
So great. Thank you for diverging into food with us today.
Of course. Thank you. I love Persian food.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Modern Persian Food Podcast with Beata and Bita. Thanks for spending time with us. If you've enjoyed what you heard today, consider telling a friend or giving us a good rating. You can subscribe to our show for free on your favorite podcasting app or find us online at modernpersianfood.com or on Instagram for the recipes and information we talked about today. We'd love to hear your thoughts and see you next time.